Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Cynthia.
All right. We are about ready. Would like to call the meeting to order at 10:05 a.m. As a courtesy to all, that you ensure that you've silenced your cell phones. Also, would like to remind all directors to turn their microphone on each time they speak to help with the audio and video recordings. For the record, I'll note that the public meeting notice was properly posted as required by law, and the notice of this board meeting was provided to each of the directors. Directors Tracy LaChance, Anthony Embro, and Austin Ruiz indicated that they would not be present for this meeting. We've now reached the portion of the meeting where we have set aside time to hear from you, the general public. Those interested in providing comments by filling out one of the cards available at the receptionist desk will be called to approach the podium to make their comments at this time. We have John Asbury, who has indicated he would like to speak. I ask that you go ahead and make your way to the podium. Morning, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm John Asbury. I live at 4201 Dove Lane in Temple, Texas. I have no financial interest in this presentation. I have no conflicts in this presentation, and I do not represent any group or individual in this presentation. I appreciate being here today, and I really want to thank you all for all the work you do and wish you luck for all the major decisions you make for Texas in the future. You're truly a value that is going to make us or break us in Texas, and I greatly appreciate your work at this point. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the Williamson County water situation. And FYI, I have no problem with the Belton Stillhouse water transfer. That's not what I'm here for. I think in the future that the Georgetown, Lake, Belton, and Stillhouse and Granger is not going to be adequate to meet the needs of the water in this area. All the Brazos River Authority's towns are getting bigger, but particularly this area is expanding at a rapid rate and is going to need some additional water resources at this point. What I'm proposing are maybe even just supporting, because I don't know what's going on there, is an additional water line to come into the area. This would be a water line that would terminate in your facility at Lake Granger, the treatment center there, and it would originate on the Brazos River below where the Little River system comes into the Brazos River. And hopefully it would be placed in the area over the Carrizo-Wilcox aquifer at the same time. It would be powered by a solar panel electrical system. When you use it, when you're not using it, you can sell the electricity to the local utilities. If it's a cloudy day or you're using the pumps to pump water at night, you could use the utilities electricity at this point. I don't know how big a pipeline you would need. I'm not an expert in that. 36 inches or greater at this point. It would basically cross Milam County into Williamson County to the Granger facility. At the origin of this pipeline on the Brazos River, you would probably have a sand filter system so you could at least pump clear water in that pipeline to the Lake Granger facility. I think it would be the responsibility of local entities for final treatment of that water and to get it to their particular area at this present time also. In addition to this, I would propose that at the same spot, if you're over the aquifer, you could begin to develop an extraction, ejection, a water well system with that aquifer. I don't know how much now you do that but your resources are limited, and you're going to have to find water somewhere else and a place to store the water. And the only place you really got left is a few more lakes and the aquifers. The Texas aquifers are being drawn down significantly at this point, and there's space in them for storage. At the present time, if you draw a line from I-35 north and south on the Brazos River, for the most part, anything that falls from I-35 south goes into the Gulf of Mexico. There's a few lakes that catch this, but 90% of that water goes into the Gulf of Mexico. You've got responsibilities for the ecological environment where the Brazos River goes into the Gulf of Mexico, and you've got to meet that water requirement for that particular environment. But the vast majority of that water particularly goes in to the Gulf of Mexico. It turns into salt water, and you have to recycle. It's very expensive, so and then to get that water back to a drinkable thing. Brazos River, as you know more better than I do, goes up and down. And as an example, this year, the water flow rate near Bryan College Station is 700 feet, 400 feet. At that point, it's really low. Last year in June, we had all the water and rain. For about 3 months, that water flow was from anywhere from 10,000 to 36,000 cubic feet per second going down the Brazos River. I drove over by Sugar Land, and the river was out of its banks, clear into the floodplain at this point. All that water went into the Gulf of Mexico. There is no reason to have excess water go into the Gulf of Mexico. The ocean levels are rising, and if you don't put the water from the Brazos River into the Gulf of Mexico, it's not going to make any difference at this point. It's either used or it's lost at this point in sea. And so what I would suggest in these wells that you use for both extraction and for injection is kind of like a spoke. You have a central focus area where the wells are drilled, but they would go down to the aquifer, and then they would turn and go parallel out. It's like for those in West Texas, you know about fracking drilling, and they can go out from 500 feet to 2,000 feet. A vertical well.
Mr. Ashbury, if you can go ahead and wrap it up. You have 30 seconds.
Okay. A vertical well has a cone of where the water is pulled out at this point. And see, if you have the lines going out, you don't have that. And you can probably put in more water, and the limiting thing will be the filter to do that. And this way you can store water. You're going to get the water back. Maybe you won't, but somebody's going to use it at this point, and Texas needs it for it's all anyway. Anyway, you should have a handout for the whole thing, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking time to speak with us today. Please note that as the board, we're limited by the provisions of the Open Meetings Act and its ability to participate in discussions or deliberations on the issues that are not posted on the agenda. We will move to agenda item number 1, report and possible discussion on General Manager CEO, reported by David Thompson, General Manager and CEO. David.
First of all, I don't have a long report. Good morning and welcome. It's glorious to see it raining outside, and all I wanted to do this morning was introduce our new Executive Services Administrative Assistant that many of the board will get to know and meet. So if you haven't introduced yourself, Jessica Robeson, please stand up so we can embarrass you. She's new to the team and is doing a great job, so welcome. And that's it.
Number 2, discussion and possible action on central office building renaming dedication by David Collingsworth, General Manager, CEO.
Go to, I can do the slides. So the gentleman that you're looking at on the screen is the late General Phil Ford. Phil built the building that you're sitting in. Phil contributed his entire life to serving the people of the United States of America. For 38 years, he was an Air Force soldier. He retired as a 3-star general. and had duties and a resume that's longer than any amount of slides that we will read in the surplus items today. And our staff thinks it would be very appropriate for us to have a ceremony and dedicate and name this building and this property after General Phil Ford because of his service not only to the United States of America as a general and a soldier, but also he saw his 17 years here as a service to the Brazos Basin and the folks of the state of Texas. So there's some of the highlights of his career, working on some of the divestiture stuff at PK, the decommissioning of the hydropower, which saved us millions upon millions. And then also just a few years ago, as you heard the gentleman talk a moment ago about the need for more water, Phil was the leader of the System Operations Permit and Water Management Plan that provided over 100,000 acre-feet of water to be provided to citizens in the Brazos Basin. So that's what we wanted to bring to you today for any discussion. Should the board so adopt this idea, then we would have a ceremony in the springtime and invite the family in and change the signs and have a little ceremony for Phil's family. We lost Phil, I guess it was about 2 years ago is when Phil passed away. So.
As Philip J. Ford served the Brazos River Authority in the state of Texas for 17 years as General Manager, Chief Executive Officer from March 2001 until April 2018. Whereas Mr. Ford oversaw the construction of the central office building, its dedication, and its many renovations. Whereas during his tenure at BRA, Mr. Ford also oversaw the construction of the Williamson County Regional Raw Water Line, the decommissioning of the Possum Kingdom Lake hydroelectric facilities, the divestiture of residential and commercial leased properties at Possum Kingdom Lake, and whereas during his tenure, Mr. Ford also oversaw the approval of the System Operation Permit and Water Management Plan, the first permit of its kind in the state of Texas. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority, to honor the service and memory of Mr. Ford, hereby resolves to formally rename the Waco Central Office the Philip J. Ford Central Office Facilities.
Director Huber, a second made by Cynthia Flores, presiding officer. Pull the board.
Presiding Officer Flores,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director Abraham,
Yes.
Director Boren,
Yes.
Director Fernandez,
Yes.
Director Giese,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Jimenez,
Yes.
Director Crone,
Yes.
Director Lattimore,
Yes.
Director Leslie,
Yes.
Director Lloyd,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Sanderson,
Yes.
Director Savage,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Action on determination of interruptible water available for 2023 by Aaron Abel, Water Services Manager. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Directors. This is an item that we bring to you each year to establish the amount of interruptible water available for the upcoming calendar year. So we're talking about 2023. Can't believe it's 2023 almost. So I'll walk through the definition of interruptible water, our interruptible water sales procedure, and talk a bit about the history of interruptible water. We'll also talk a little bit about the 2022 interruptible water customers, our requests that we've received for 2023 interruptible water, and how the drought has to be considered in making interruptible water available. Just a spoiler, due to ongoing drought conditions impacting the basin, we're currently recommending that interruptible water for 2023 not be made available at this time. And you know, we have to protect our long-term customers of the BRA water supply system. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So interruptible water is just that. It's interruptible. Availability is not guaranteed, and interruptible water is made available on a temporary basis only. So as far as what interruptible water is, it's basically the firm water that is left in storage that's not used from the previous year. So you have to kind of go through a couple definitions. And so the firm water is the water that's available to long-term contracts and customers throughout the basin. And it's based on the firm yield of the reservoirs and reservoir system. And then then you have to think about what firm yield is. And firm yield can be defined as the maximum water volume a reservoir or subsystem of reservoirs can provide each year during the critical drought of record. And that's based on water availability modeling and certain constraints on water use through the drought of record. The availability of water, of interruptible water, varies from year to year depending on weather and water usage. So in dry years, such as what we've experienced in the latter part of 2021 and into 2022, the firm use, the use of water under long-term contracts is higher, and that decreases the amount of firm water that's left in storage, or what's interruptible water. And then on the flip side, you can think about 2021. We had a really, really wet summer and 2021. And so in wetter years, we have lower water use, and that causes more firm water to remain in storage. And so it increases the interruptible water available. So interruptible water is sold at the system rate, and agricultural uses pay the agricultural rate, which is 70% of the system rate. And we've been supplying interruptible water in this form since 2008. And I guess the other thing, typically interruptible water is purchased for agriculture and mining uses, and it's typically as a backup supply. See, we have a procedure that sets out and outlines all the pertinent details with regard to interruptible water. We did update these procedures earlier this year, and that was mainly to remove a lot of the language related to multi-year interruptible contracts. In the past, we had supplied multiple years of interruptible water under contract form. The annual calculation methodology includes a safety factor established by the board for the calculation of interruptible water. And really the purpose of the safety factor is to ensure that interruptible contracts don't impact long-term contracts. We have to be conservative in making interruptible water available in order to protect our long-term firm water customers. We've used a safety factor of 0.25, which provides for a 75% factor of safety, or margin of safety, every year since the inception of interruptible water in 2008. We also have, in our interruptible contracts, there's a provision that's contained that allows BRA to suspend use of water if we reach stage 3 drought emergency conditions under the drought contingency plan that we operate under. And we actually went to stage 3 at Proctor last month. Priority is given to requests of 1,000 acre-feet and less when allocating the available interruptible water, and the procedure has rules when we have requests that exceed the availability in a certain area. The board may authorize an amount of interruptible water that is less than the amount determined in the calculation, depending on drought conditions or other factors that may exist. And additionally, we have the procedure outlines and has flexibility to make interruptible water available when water supply conditions improve. So we'll talk a little bit about the drought and what we may see. The graphic here summarizes the amounts of interruptible water that has been offered, and that's in blue. And each of these blue bars represent the amount that was offered or authorized by the board each year from 2008 to 2022. And the water use in each of these is, in 2022 extends through the end of September. The orange bars are are basically the amount of water that was contracted in each of the years, and then the green bars represents the amount of water used under these interruptible contracts. We've identified several years in 2011 and through 2015 when we had the most recent significant drought, when the decision was made to limit the availability of interruptible water due to drought conditions. And I'll kind of point those out and walk you through those. In mid-October of 2011, 2011 represents the hottest, driest one-year drought in the history of Texas, well, at least dating back to 1895. So it's a significant one-year drought, and it extended into through into 2015. In that year, in October of 2011, 2012 interruptible water was brought to the board, and the decision was made to only make about 8,500 acre-feet available. And that's the note up here. And that was contracts that were under multi-year contracts at the time. The total system storage at that time in October of 2011 was about 64% full. Right now, we're a little less than 71% full. And by March of 2012, so a couple months after, the board made the decision to only make 8,500 acre-feet available, we received rain. The system recovered, and it went up to about 95% full. And at that point, we allocated additional interruptible water for 2012. Oh, wait, a couple other points here. In mid-October of 2013, we were deciding on 2014 interruptible water, and the system total at that point was about 66% full, I believe, yeah. And at the time, drought conditions did not improve in the last quarter of 2013 and throughout 2014. So at that time, we made 44,000 acre-feet available, I guess it's this point, for the multi-year contracts at the time. We didn't make any available until, well, actually, we didn't make any available in 2014. We didn't improve that. We didn't get the rain in the spring of 2014 and in the summer that, we thought, so we didn't make any additional interruptible water available. And then finally, in October of 2014, we were 69% full at the time, and when we were considering 2015, the availability of 2015 interruptible water, and we made about 44,000, less than 44,000 acre-feet available in October of 2014. And then we did receive rain. Obviously, as the drought broke, the 2011 to 2015 drought broke, we received a lot of rain. There was significant flooding, and started in April and May of 2015, and we rose above our system stage 1 drought watch on June 1st, and we made the additional interruptible water available for 2015. So those are kind of stepping through a couple of instances where we made decisions on not making interruptible water available at those points. So what is 2022, our customers this year, what are the breakdowns of that? So we had a total amount of 2022 interruptible water contracted in a little bit less than 57,000 acre-feet. And we had contracts that equal to or are greater than 1,000 acre-feet, a little less or a little more than 44,000 acre-feet. We had 5 contracts equal to or greater than 1,000 acre-feet, and that was around 40. I just said that. I apologize. We had 59 contracts that were less than 1,000 acre-feet, and that made up the remaining interruptible water for 2022. This last bullet, we had about 30,000 acre-feet of contracts that were executed after the initial requests. This was due really to the intensification of the drought and a lot of customers coming back and needing additional water under their interruptible contracts. And then also we had some new customers that wanted to contract for 2022 interruptible water. This is the breakdown of our calculation based on current conditions and water use. It incorporates over the last 3 years our maximum lakeside water use, and then also average downstream releases over the last 3 years. So this is the breakdown for 2022 interruptible water by segment. The first column just shows the individual reservoirs in the subsystems, and the second column shows the interruptible water that was calculated. This is using the 0.25 safety factor, and the total for the entire system is down here at the bottom, a little bit more than 57,000 acre feet, and that is significantly less than last couple of years, obviously because of the higher water use that we've had this year. Moving forward and looking at the requests that we've received for 2023 interruptible water, this is a map that delineates the diversion locations throughout the basin that we've received for 2023 interruptible water. We received these, the deadline was the end of September. These are color-coded based on upper basin, central basin, and lower basin. So the blue is the upper, green is central, and red is the lower. And then we had a breakdown of, on this table to the right, don't try to read it, it's really small, but it basically breaks down the amount of requested water for 2023. The total is a little bit greater than 48,000 acre feet. 48% of this total is for industrial use, 38% is for irrigation purposes, and 14% is for mining. So the current drought has to be considered and factored into the decision in making interruptible water available. As I mentioned before, the BRA water supply system is currently at 71% full, a little bit less than 71% full, similar to where we were in 2013 and 2014 levels when this board made the decision to not make additional interruptible water available above and beyond the multi-year contracts. I guess all reservoirs and reservoir subsystems, including the system as a whole, are in stage 1 drought watch. And then, as I mentioned before, Lake Proctor entered stage 3 drought emergency last month when it reached 44% full. We did curtail the use of interruptible water contracts at that reservoir at that time. I think I failed to mention that, but we do have provisions in all of our interruptible contracts that if we reach stage 3 drought emergency, really at any one of our reservoirs, we could curtail the use and basically not allow use under interruptible water. So that's something that you have to consider in making interruptible water available. We've had inflows into the system, and when I say inflows, that's the amount of water that enters all 11 reservoirs on a monthly basis through the end of September. It's comparable to historic lows, and really it's been less than what we saw in 2011. So we are trending lower on the lower side of things as far as water entering the reservoirs. And worst case projections indicate that the BRA system as a whole could reach stage 3 drought emergency by the last quarter of 2023. So those are things to consider when making interruptible water available. And our recommendation at this time with the conditions of the water supply system, we're not recommending interruptible water for 2023 unless drought conditions improve. And we do have the procedure that we follow does have flexibility. And if we receive rain and inflows and our reservoir storage increases, and typically we'll probably look at stage 1 as a system that's about 79% full, a little bit more than 1.5 million acre feet. That's probably the trigger that we may look at to come back to you guys. Hopefully in the next several months, to make interruptible water available. But that's something that we're going to have to monitor, and we will be monitoring it closely. But there are forecasts. La Nina is something that you've probably heard in the news, and that does factor into the jet stream and how storms impact this area. And so when La Nina is in control, which is cold water off the equatorial Pacific, that causes the jet stream to move further north of us, and we miss the rain. And that's what caused us missing the rain in the spring and this year. And it looks like potentially we could transition to more neutral conditions sometime in the springtime. And there's some unknowns about when we will start to see the rain, and that's what we'll be watching is the increased rain that we hope to see and the inflows in the spring of 2023. So that's what we're recommending at this time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Excellent report. Thank you very much. We don't have any storage, underground storage capability right now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And secondly, I think you said 64 contracts. Are those annual contracts and they guarantee X amount of, I use the word allotment of water each year?
Yeah, so this year, I think we had about, 64 contracts.
Go back to your slide.
For 1 year. 64 total. So interruptible contracts are temporary. It's a 1 year term.
Allocation.
Allocation, yeah. It's not guaranteed. And, in the past, we had multi-year contracts, but those went away at the end of 2021. And at this point, we only contract 1 year contracts under interruptible.
So if I'm customer Dow, and let's say I don't use 28,000 acre feet, I use 25, are you allowed to sell that difference that they don't use to another customer or to somebody that's outside your current customer list? Or do they take full do these customers take full 100% allotment?
They typically they don't use their full amount. So, I mean, obviously, there's some entities, Gulf Coast Water Authority and Dow, during drought years, they will use their full allotment. There is provisions in our interruptible contracts that, potentially, an entity could assign, a part or portion of their contract, to another entity. But that's typically doesn't happen.
Okay, so for instance, out of 100% contracts of delivered water or guaranteed water to be available, if you have 10% of it not sold, do they still pay for it, or are they only paying for what they really take in?
They pay for the annual contracted amount that they enter. So, for Dow, the 28,000 acre feet, they
Do they subsell it to another entity, or do you know if that's?
No, and just going down the list there, a Dow usually purchases this water only for insurance purposes, in case other water supplies aren't dependable. So their willingness to offload this onto somebody else is typically zero, because this is a risk mitigation.
Right.
The farmers are typically the ones that buy it and use it that year. And it's a 1 year, the new contracts are all 1 year. They're not guaranteed. And again, this is different than our system water contracts, which are long-term system contracts. Another point of reference is that none of the revenues off this money are rolled into the budget projections that you see for a year. So this is just additional revenue if we're able to manage and have interruptible water contracts. Does that answer your question, Gary?
Yeah, yes, sir. That's good. Thank you very much. I
And
appreciate
Director
it.
Giese has a question. Make sure to turn on your microphone.
On page 4, you had your sold water and your used water. What's the difference in is the used water used at no cost by somebody?
Yeah, so, and that goes back to what David just mentioned. A lot of our customers, they contract the water for basically backup supply. The agricultural industry, if they get rain from the sky, they're not going to need their BRA contract or the interruptible contract. So a lot of years when we have not much rain, we don't see as much use under the interruptible.
Okay, so that's just the delta on what they
That's correct.
purchased and what they actually used?
Yes,
Okay.
Director Sanderson has a question.
Real quickly, these are or not take or pay contracts, just to clarify.
They are.
They are
Yeah,
take
they
or
are
pay.
take or
Okay.
pay, take or pay.
Director Crone has a question.
I don't know if, okay. For the folks that come with a contract and say, I want to purchase this water, you said a lot of them are involving farming, agriculture, and like that. would this be a consideration for somebody that is contemplating building a golf course? Could they purchase interruptible water?
They could purchase interruptible water. The one caveat there is it is interruptible. And if this, just for example, we've brought to you today a recommendation to not make any available. So if it stays dry like this for the next 5 years, there won't be any interruptible water made available to them. So if that's their water supply, then
Then they don't have.
they may have a tough time staying in business.
Putting on the ground.
Putting on, yeah. The other thing that I'd like to point out, go back to that slide, and I think it's important for those that are watching that are streaming. Interruptible water, in the BRA's opinion, is very beneficial to the state of Texas. But it's because that we have so much water available to contract for long term, and so little amount of that water is still used. As Texas continues to grow and there's more demands on our reservoirs, and that delta of what's contracted and what's actually used begins to get smaller, then the availability of BRA to make long-term or interruptible water is going to be less and less and less. I don't know when that becomes a reality, but in the next 20 to 30 years, the ability of BRA to make water, interruptible water available is going to be very challenging.
Okay, well, Aaron, once again, great job educating, reminding us as a board, but more importantly, those that are watching online. It's so important for everybody to really understand this. So thank you for taking time to really explain. I believe you have a resolution.
Yes.
Resolved by the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority, BRA, that due to continued drought conditions, exceptionally low reservoir inflows, the Stage 3 Drought Emergency Declaration for Lake Proctor, and potential for additional Stage 3 Drought Emergency Declarations in 2023, no interruptible water will be authorized for sale in calendar year 2023 at this time. Be it further resolved that if drought conditions improve and inflows produce a significant increase in reservoir storage within the BRA water supply system, the authorization of interruptible water for calendar year 2023 will be presented to the board for consideration at a later date.
Heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Motion made by Director Lattimore, a second by please call the board.
Director Flores,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director Abraham,
Yes.
Director Boren,
Yes.
Director Fernandez,
Yes.
Director Giese,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Jimenez,
Yes.
Director Crone,
Yes.
Director Lattimore,
Yes.
Director Leslie,
Yes.
Director Lloyd,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Sanderson,
Yes.
Director Savage,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Agenda item 4, discussion and possible action on 2023 schedule of board meetings by David Collingsworth, General Manager, CEO. David.
So our presiding officer and our bylaws require that we identify our meeting dates a year in advance for next year's calendar. Last year was the first calendar year that we had 6 meetings instead of 4. And from our perspective, that worked really well for us in being able to manage the amount of business that we needed to take care of with our board. So before you is the recommended schedule for next year's board meetings. And we've tried to our best ability, avoid holiday weekends and long weekends and things like that. So that's the calendar that we would put before you and recommend.
Thank you, David. Any questions for David? All right, please read the resolution.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby adopts the following schedule for meetings of the Board of Directors for calendar year 2023. January 30th, March 27th, May 22nd, July 31st, September 25th, and November 13th.
Right, we've heard the reading of the resolution. A motion was made by Director Wilson to adopt, the second by Director Smith. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Flores.
Yes.
Director Huber.
Yes.
Director Taylor.
Yes.
Director Abraham.
Yes.
Director Boren.
Yes.
Director Fernandez.
Yes.
Director Giese.
Yes.
Director Henderson.
Yes.
Director Jimenez.
Yes.
Director Crone.
Yes.
Director Lattimore.
Yes.
Director Leslie.
Yes.
Director Lloyd.
Yes.
Director Luton.
Yes.
Director Sanderson.
Yes.
Director Savage.
Yes.
Director Smith.
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Agenda item 5, discussion and possible action on human resource policy changes by Monica Wheelis, Human Resource Manager. Monica, good morning.
Each year, I bring to the board the personnel policy changes that we're recommending, and I have one new policy I'm recommending and then a few changes. Can you get the next slide, Lisa? So I'm going to run through, this is the actual resolution. I'm going to run through it and then we'll flip it back for you. So we're recommending one new policy, which is the Lake Ranger Traumatic Event Leave Policy. This designates paid leave for our lake rangers if they experience a traumatic event in their doing their course of business. The next slide, please. We are adding stronger language to the sexual harassment policy to better align it with changes to statute. Slide, please. In the professional appearance policy, we've removed the prohibition of facial jewelry and replaced it with language that allows for facial jewelry within societal norms. And we're also adding to the categories of employment, we're changing 3 months to 4 months for the number of months that a seasonal worker can be employed during the summer, at any time, but during the summers when we have most of our seasonal workers. And it will still have the maximum number of days be 120 for a seasonal employee, but this provides supervisors a longer period of time that they can employ part-time workers for when, maybe they're working fewer hours a week, but they can keep them for a longer period in the summer. Next slide. Holidays work. We're providing employees who are required to work on a holiday the option to either be paid for the holiday in addition to the hours that they work, or have their hours for the holiday put into their comp bank. So it gives them a little bit more flexibility. If they need, a little bit more in their pocketbook, they can get paid for that time. Otherwise, it would go in their comp leave bank and they could use it at another time. And then in line with our continuing efforts to improve safety program, we added a little bit of language to this policy for employee responsibilities and reports. And if an employee is taking medication that may affect their ability to safely and effectively perform their job, then they have the requirement to report that. Slide. Minor change to the drug and alcohol-free policy. We added the BRA may implement procedures in addition to policies. So currently the policy just talks about we may implement policies. We're just adding the word procedures to that to beef that up a little bit. And then the request for conflict resolution policy. This is another change where we added stronger language to better align with the statute. And that's all of the changes. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, sir.
We have a question here by Director Wilson.
On 2, who makes the determination?
A majority. Well, I kind of thought I would get this question. I think it would be in combination with HR and the supervisor. If the supervisor has concerns, then they would bring it to HR, and then we would discuss it together. It's a difficult time to hire right now, certainly a difficult time to hire employees, especially younger generation that, just have your general earrings and nothing else. So we're trying to be a little bit more flexible, but we've provided us the off-ramp should we get a little bit more radical than what we think is appropriate for the workplace.
Well, I was just concerned there wasn't, here's what it is, here's what allowed, so it's kind of subjective
Yes.
for each circumstance.
Yes.
Okay.
And it does have the provision in there for, if it's a safety sensitive position, of course, that has a whole different realm of what we need to look at. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
It was the most difficult to figure out, okay, what's the best language for that? Yes, sir.
On 8.01, I think, if you pop forward. 8.01. Keep going. Or procedure, is that correct in the singular or plural?
What's your question, Alan?
Is or procedure correct in the singular or in the plural?
If we had a procedure regarding this particular, it would be one procedure that would go in line with the drug and alcohol policy.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby approves the revisions to the Human Resources Policy Manual as presented at its November 14, 2022 meeting to be effective November 15, 2022.
Resolution, is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Motion made by Director Wilson, a second made by Director Henderson. Please poll the board.
Mr. Flores?
Yes.
Director Huber?
Yes.
Director Taylor?
Yes.
Director Abraham?
Yes.
Director Boren?
Yes.
Director Fernandez?
Yes.
Director Giese?
Yes.
Director Henderson?
Yes.
Director Jimenez?
Yes.
Director Crone?
Yes.
Director Lattimore?
Yes.
Director Leslie?
Yes.
Director Lloyd?
Yes.
Director Luton?
Yes.
Director Sanderson?
Yes.
Director Savage?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Wilson?
Yes.
Item 6, report and possible discussion on the project delivery update by Blake Kettler, Technical Services Manager.
Morning, Director Flores, members of the board. Today, we'd like to highlight just a few active projects that we're working on throughout the organization, and also kind of finish up recapping where we're at with some future potential board authorizations coming up. So this first one is a risk-based capital planning and management support. If you recall, for those who were here in early 2021, we brought an authorization to you to move forward with the risk-based asset management and capital planning program, and this is kind of where we're at right now. So what we've done is we went out and hired Carollo Engineering, and they've kind of helped guide us through this realm. We knew kind of some of the takeaways or what we were looking to get there was basically to help us not only just track asset information, but consider it from a risk-based perspective, the likelihood of failure, consequence of failure, and redundancy for each asset. So that way we can focus our maintenance program in relation to that, and also plan for future projects from a capital perspective based off those aspects. So what we've done so far is we've selected the Institute of Asset Management framework to follow for our asset management program. Usually what we've seen, kind of the industry standard, is the ISO 55001 or the Institute of Asset Management when it comes in trying to set up your asset management program as it best relates to industry standards. And there's a whole lot of complexities there, and I won't go into why we selected the Institute of Asset Management, but basically, just the general feel, it was more focused from a risk-based perspective in our eyes and better fit the organization. So we made that selection there, and we've gone through kind of the initial round of what's called the gap assessment there. So we've gone in and basically said, okay, based on the Institute of Asset Management framework, here's where you want to be, here's where you are right now. There are gaps there, but that was to be expected. We're trying to take that asset management program to the next level. So it basically gave us areas that we need to focus on, us as BRA and Carollo, on areas where we need to institute a change management plan and things of that nature to get us in line there. So we did that. We've gone through defining on what an asset is, and I know that sounds pretty simple, but it can get very complicated when you get into it on dollar amounts and the risk associated with an asset and all that type stuff. So we've been working through that. We've started doing a needs assessment for our asset management software that we're going to go out and pursue later this year. So that will be a future board item later in probably 23, maybe early 24, that will come to you for authorization for a replacement for our MicroMain asset management software. So we're going through that needs assessment, and we're also getting ready to kick off our pilot programs at Possum Kingdom and East Williamson County. You may ask, how can you put together a pilot program without the asset management software? Because I had the same question. I asked Carollo, I was like, why aren't we getting the cart before the horse here? It's not necessarily the case. What we're doing on the risk ranking for the assets and all that stuff, that is going to be done with or without the asset management software. The asset management software is just to track that information. So we can go ahead and kick off in implementing that pilot program here shortly. So that'll happen this year, and then we'll work towards pursuing that asset management software, and then we'll have the ability, depending on our comfort level in doing that risk analysis for those assets, we'll have the ability to us do that for our other assets throughout the organization, or depend on Carollo to help us with that process. So that's the first project here. One thing, I know Director LaChance is not here. Last board meeting, she had mentioned that she kind of wanted a red light, green light, on target, off target as far as the budget and schedule perspectives. We're looking at that currently, so hopefully here in the near future we'll be able to address that concern. The next project is the Possum Kingdom Flow Control Gate Replacement Project. So let me see. Inside of the bear trap gates right here, you can kind of see the upstream and downstream gates. That's the chamber underneath there that we fill full of water to lower and raise a gate. And in this instance, lower means releasing water, raising a gate means stopping the flow of water. There has been currently there, we use what's called roller gates to allow water into that gate chamber. The tolerance on those roller gates, it's basically rollers inside of a channel, is so tight that if you drop a quarter in there, the gate will bind up and roll the seal, and then basically it's out of service until we can go in and overhaul that gate. So we're looking to get rid of that vulnerability there. We're also looking to try to get ahead of zebra mussels, because it's not if you get zebra mussels, it's when you get zebra mussels. And you can imagine if we have issues with one quarter, what zebra mussels would do to those channels. So we're trying to get ahead of that and put in slide gates instead. So we've contracted with Gannett Fleming. They're helping us with the design aspects there. And ultimately RSMU, excuse me, RSMU, or our Reservoir System Maintenance Unit out there at PK, they'll be doing the construction for us. We decided not only do they do exceptional work, quality in mind, but also I think it made sense from a sequencing aspect. If you go in there, and the way that these gates are set up, you have 3 operating piers, so you can operate 3 gates out of each pier. If you take that gate out of service, and we get water that we have to release from upstream raining, whatever, we need to be able to put those gates back in service really quickly. So due to those complexities, I think it makes sense for our RSMU crew to perform that work up there. So where we're at right now, we've received the 90% design. we're addressing comments there. We'll move forward with 100%, and then we'll turn our RSMU crew loose on it, and they'll start making those improvements there. This is the Lake Granbury reinforced concrete components. You may also hear it referred to as buttress 1 and 44. We've had, of course, since the inception of that facility out there, we've had quite a few different inspections out there. Here recently, we had a recommendation to look into the retaining walls located right here and on that end of the dam. They were seeing some spawing and cracking where the buttress meets up with the retaining wall. We went in and did a stability analysis on those retaining walls to see what's going on. Why are we getting that? Why are we getting that spawing there at that joint? Ultimately, what was determined was the way that the retaining wall was built. It's kind of built somewhat you could consider on a different foundation than what the dam was built on. They dowed those together, and what you're having is that retaining wall moving, settling over time is causing some minor spawning and cracking there. It's not a concern from a dam safety perspective or anything like that, but we wanted to go in and we basically had one inspection report say, oh, it's not an issue, and another one said, oh, it is an issue. So we wanted to seek clarity on that. So we went in and did another assessment with Walter P. Moore, and just to make sure everything's good there. They also contracted with Fugro to evaluate the soils and rock and materials behind those retaining walls. And basically, the conclusion was it's not of concern. It's stable. We can stabilize it a little more. What we're going to do is, and this is them talking, we're going to excavate out a minor area back behind those retaining walls and fill it with concrete. And the construction aspect of this will take part in a larger project there that we'll kick off in Granbury here over probably the next year or so. It's going to include our stop log system project, the construction for buttress 1 and 44, and also a Tainer gate and hoist evaluation there. So all those components kind of have inner working, so it seemed best to marry those together and let the engineer and contractor work with us on the sequencing of those events to make those improvements. But the main takeaway here is we basically reached the conclusion of the recommendations out of there. There's no concern from a stability aspect. Everything's good there, but we'll make that minor improvement to solid everything up. And then the Lake Limestone hydrostatic relief system assessment. This one again, in a lot of our projects, different things will come out of reports just because we're required. We inspect our facilities on an annual basis, 5-year basis, and we perform monthly and quarterly inspections as well. So this one here came out of a recent report. There is a hydrostatic relief system underneath the service spillway, which you can see here. Basically what that does is relieve that pressure from the reservoir, that water pushing against the dam to decrease uplift of the dam and ultimately, an uncontrolled release. So they put in a hydrostatic relief system to relieve that pressure that's forming under that concrete portion of the dam. So the recommendation was, hey, this system's been in service now for going on 50 years. It's probably time that we go in and assess it and just make sure everything's up to speed there. There's nothing, I guess, nothing like alarming, like from a concern or anything like that. This isn't, again, not a dam safety issue. This is just making sure what's there continues to function the way that it should into the future. So we hired Stantec, and we are early on in those evaluations. We've done some checking of piezometers in the area. Piezometer is a tube that goes down in the ground, and they measure the water level under the dam itself or under the embankment. So they've done some flushing, I think some camera visual inspections of those piezometers, but we'll continue towards progressing to get a green light, red light. If it is red light, what improvements we need to make on that system there. And then just to wrap up, a few upcoming agenda items. One, we've got the copper ion generator, the construction contract approval. We're looking to have that, hopefully, fingers crossed, at the January board meeting for approval so we can move forward with construction there. And then also the spillway pump and piping, I think kind of close to the same time frame. Hopefully, the January board meeting will get approval to move forward with construction on those. And that kind of wraps up my project update this morning. One thing that we'll probably do in January, this will probably, if David allows me the time, it'll be probably a more detailed item. I'd like to get into project prioritization, how we develop the CIP, kind of a glimpse behind the scenes. So any questions?
Hernandez.
Blake, great report. Thank you. One question, just going back to the first project, the risk-based capital planning, the budget of $450,000, everything that sounds like is just internal work. Or is there actual expenditure of $450,000? Or are we budgeting internal staff resources in that budget there?
So the way we do our direct labor or internal staff, it's and David Thompson, you may jump in here if I don't portray it correctly, but basically if it's something that we can perform externally, but we're also doing it internally, then we track it as direct labor as part of the project. So us reviewing, sitting in the meetings, doing stuff like that isn't necessarily captured in that. What I think you're starting to see is not only working through the program, leading up through the pilot program, which is going to be a heavy expenditure, but also kind of the front end monies for acquiring the asset management software. So getting back to your question, there's not a whole lot of direct labor associated with that $450,000. One thing to look at, there's kind of, I wouldn't call it a lag, but there's there's actually more money spent on expenses at this point in time. But when this report was put together, it's usually a month or so back from that point. So it's not capturing today where we're sitting at in time as far as expenses.
Thank you.
As a board, of course, part of our responsibility, our mission is to protect our water resources, and it's important that you bring these maintenance projects to us so that we're on top of it. So thank you for the comprehensive presentation, and we look forward to the next one coming up.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7, report and possible discussion on legislative update by Matt Phillips, Legislative and Governmental Affairs Manager.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I was really hoping to be following surplus property, but I guess we all have our place in the batting order. I really like following that to liven it up a little bit in here. So this is kind of my first legislative update that I'll give you before the ledge meets, and obviously I'll be back in front of y'all in January and then March and then May and then July, so you'll see me several times in the next several months. But for those of us that work in it, the session has started as of today. They started pre-filing bills today, and they are filing bills. I looked at the list earlier. There's a lot. Can't say much about pre-filing bills that early. I don't know that, once you pre-file something that early in the process, I don't know that many of them make it. But, best of luck to everybody who's doing it today. So I'll go through some of this and kind of walk you through very early indications of what we see coming from the ledge of this session. So I'll start off by saying, obviously, the elections were last week. No changes in leadership. So in terms of the legislative makeup, the folks that we work with, what we're going to see, pretty much the same as last session. Obviously, leadership-wise, same governor, same lieutenant governor, expect to have the same speaker. So very, very few, if any, changes. I think the Republicans increased their majorities in both houses slightly. But overall, I think the makeup is generally the same. What I want to do with this slide is help you understand the amount of major issues. A lot of times I start with the major issues just to help folks understand the issues that we think will dominate the session, those big things they're going to work on that kind of suck all the oxygen out of the Capitol. And sometimes when I come to you, there's maybe 2 or 3 things on there. Just look at the volume of the list. There are so many things that the legislature, either on the campaign trail or at the end of last session, pledged to work on this session. And so I won't spend a ton of time on each of these, but understanding the volume of this list helps you understand that other issues besides what are on this list have a hard time getting the legislature's attention, such as water, because they're busy dealing with all of these major issues. The Economic Stabilization Fund surplus, many of you have heard, it's around $27 billion. So that's a good thing. Texas is doing well. But I would kind of paraphrase a former boss of mine who was the chair of finance. He would tell you it's actually harder to govern when you have a surplus than it is when you're broke. Because when you're broke, you can just tell people no. And when you're not broke, you have to tell people no because I don't like your idea. And so it does become a little bit more difficult. So we'll see what the legislature ends up doing with that surplus. I can tell you there's a lot of eyes on it. A lot of people have a lot of ideas for what they want to do with this. So we'll see what happens. The second item kind of relates to the first one. There's been a lot of talk of using a portion of the surplus to provide property tax relief. How much that ends up being still remains to be seen. Abortion, in the wake of Roe v. Wade, you're seeing a lot of states place additional restrictions on abortion. I think Texas will be no different. School choice was a major issue on the campaign trail, so I think you'll see the legislature talk a lot about that. Gun control, I do not believe you'll see much in the way of proposals coming from leadership, but I do think that the minority party will spend some time trying to push for additional restrictions on as it relates to gun control, so I think you'll see some of that. The electric grid, the legislature was kind of rushed into that because the winter storm occurred during the session, so they had to, they were about in February, March during the session, so they had to kind of rush into the reforms that they made last session. I do not think they're done with them, so I think you'll see some additional discussion on that. Border security, another major campaign issue, so I think you'll see them talk about that some. The state of our foster care system. Chapter 313, those are the tax incentives provided for businesses to locate in Texas. The important thing about that one is Chapter 313 expires in December. So the legislature will have to do something related to it if they want to continue that program. It will actually sunset, I believe, mid to late December. So when they come back in January, it won't exist. They'll have to figure out whether or not they want to revive it and make changes to it. And then taxpayer-funded lobbying, that really relates more to counties and cities and their ability to hire lobbyists. It's been an issue the last 3 sessions. The 2 different houses, the House and the Senate, have yet to be able to come to a consensus on what that should look like, but I do think they'll take it up again this session, so we'll for sure see it. On top of all that, the legislature has a lot of sunset bills they have to deal with, a lot of major sunset bills, and this isn't even all of them. These are just the ones that more closely relate to us, less so ERCOT, but the other 3 for sure. So the legislature is going to have to pass sunset bills to continue TCEQ, Water Development Board, and PUC. Typically, with these types of bills and entities like us, you're going to see a lot of defense. Those bills tend to become Christmas trees. Everybody's going to hang something on them. So the bill that you see filed will more than likely look nothing like the bill that ends up being eventually passed. And so we will be monitoring all of these very closely. Obviously, we're regulated by TCEQ. We get funding from the Water Development Board, and then PUC regulates water and retail water and wholesale water rates. So we'll be watching those extremely closely to see, make sure bad stuff doesn't get added to them as they work their way through the process. Switching gears, talking a little bit about water. I'll just go through some of the interim charges that the House Natural Resources and Senate Water Committee are looking at. They've been meeting for the last several months, as have all the interim committees. I'll stress that interim charges don't always end up being bills. So just because they talk about it doesn't mean you're going to see it in the next session. The first one of these, coastal barrier system, the Ike Dike, that's more of a monitoring charge. They passed a bill last session to have the state be part of that and help, eventually build one. So they're just looking at where they are. The second one is kind of the kitchen sink of water issues. It looks at flood infrastructure, water infrastructure. Where are we at on implementing the water plan? Does there need to be additional funding? Where are we on doing desal? So it's basically looking at the fact that we're developing a state flood plan. We have a state water plan. Where are we on putting all of that in place? Going beyond planning and into implementing, does the state need to do more than the funding programs they already created, like SWIFT and the others that are available? So they've spent some time looking at that and seeing if the state needs to take an additional role in trying to help some of this happen. This first one here is actually kind of interesting. This came up during TCEQ's sunset process, and also the House Natural Resources Committee had a charge on it. And what that deals with is when there is a senior call on a basin, how much authority does TCEQ have to essentially pick winners and losers in terms of who they curtail? And that stems from a situation in the Brazos during the drought where there was a senior call on the Brazos, and TCEQ issued curtailments, but they chose to exempt municipalities and electric providers. And that ended up going to the Supreme Court. TCEQ lost that case. It was found that they did not have the authority to do that. And so TCEQ, in their self-evaluation, kind of asked the legislature, can you look at this? Can you look at whether or not we need more authority to be able to make those kind of decisions? The Sunset Committee chose really not to take that issue up. But House Natural did have a charge on it. They had a hearing on it. And what I would tell you is, after them listening to the discussion and understanding the complexities, the legal complexities of that issue, and reading their body language, I've got a feeling they're probably not going to touch it. I think they're going to leave it alone, leave the case law to stand as is, and not really do anything with that issue. I could be surprised, but I just don't see them after hearing the discussion that they had. Groundwater charge, there's always a groundwater charge. There's a groundwater charge every interim. And so looking at the state's regulatory process for regulating groundwater, they look at it every session. I feel like I stand up here before every session and tell you I don't think they're going to do anything. I do think you're going to see legislation come from both sides of the groundwater issue. And by both sides, I mean those trying to develop groundwater and those not wanting groundwater to be developed and transported. So I think you're going to see legislation on both sides. I would tell you that I don't think, based on how the House and the Senate have interacted on groundwater the last several sessions, there's going to be much consensus either way. And so as the legislature tends to do, I think you may see some tinkering around the edges of groundwater policy, but I don't think you're going to see major wholesale changes to how the state regulates groundwater. And then the last one is a monitoring charge as it relates to the waters of the United States. Switching gears to the Senate. So this first one, as it relates to water infrastructure, is less about major water infrastructure like dams. This actually relates to leaky pipes and local infrastructure and lessons learned from the winter freeze and how a lot of local entities found out the state of their infrastructure was not very good. And how can they fix that? Do they have local resources to be able to do that? And what does that look like? And so I do think, and this gets back to the surplus discussion, I think there will be some attempts to siphon off some of that money to create a fund for local entities, think, smaller rural utilities, to be able to access some more state funding to, fix leaky pipes and update their infrastructure so that maybe we won't have problems like that if we have another winter storm like we had in the past. So that's really more what that relates to, as opposed to large infrastructure, dams, and pipelines. The second charge is really similar to the House's kitchen sink charge, and that's looking at, okay, we've got this water plan, we got all these projects in it. Where are we on getting any of that done? Does the state need to invest more funding? It also looks at seawater desal. How close are we to that being a reality? When is it going to be a reality? Can the state play a role? And so they've continued to have discussions on that. And then once again, a groundwater charge. So that the Senate has a groundwater charge very similar to the House's. They're actually having their hearing on that charge on Wednesday. I think the discussion that gets had will be similar to the one the House had, where you'll have folks from both sides come in and argue about how groundwater should be regulated. And then, once again, I don't think they'll make a lot of major changes, resulting out of what the discussion that comes out of that charge. So that's all I've got. So again, the pre-filing started today. So technically session has begun, and I'll be back in front of you on January to tell you a little bit more about what I think they're doing.
Municipalities, county governments, special districts, they can't, under the law of recapture or whatever, eminent domain, they can't come in and take water, surface water that the Brazos would have, can they?
No.
Because we're on state, ours is state property.
Correct.
So they could not, one entity could not confiscate or demand.
We simply have the rights to it.
Yeah, I know we
It's
do,
owned by
yeah.
the state. So no, they cannot do that.
Yeah, I just wanted I thought, okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
The state flood plan, is under, you're involved in that for Lower Brazos. Has there been much public participation? And then the draft is due January? Is that all on schedule?
It is on schedule. We're on schedule to get our draft turned in and get our plan done in time. Public participation, I think, has been lacking. I think that's probably the same amongst all regions. I think it's similar to water planning. I think that, folks get involved in flood planning shortly after a flood, but if you don't have one for a while, they forget about it. It's similar to droughts and water supply. People care about water during a drought, but then when it rains and you got water, people stop paying attention. So I think it's that typical cycle.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Matt, thank you.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it. All right, agenda item number 8, report and possible discussion on fiscal year 2022 fourth quarter budget report by David Thompson, Chief Financial Officer. David?
Good morning. Let's
Morning.
take a look at the fiscal year-end numbers. And I do have a chart here that shows the different key elements we have here, but I'd rather go to the actual numbers themselves to help you talk a little bit through that. First of all is revenues. We're $3.4 million over budget. And as we mentioned before, this is mainly the interruptible water. Next is the expenses, 8.1 is made up of two different elements. One is 6.2 million of the lower spends by all the departments, but also about 1.8 million of it is debt services related to the payoff of the Texas Water Development loan that we did back in May of 2nd. And that leads into the next one, which is the $6 million that we paid off the loan for BRA's 30% proportion of the Allen's Creek. And then we went through this back in the last board meeting as well. And last is the operating projects, 2.7, they're basically underspend on that. And they're multi-year projects, so those dollars have been moved into the FY23 budget. Talking about capital projects, we have a variance of $20 million. But when we did the board amendment back in April, we had included the $6 million in that. So technically speaking, our variance is only 14 million. So the 6 million does offset the two numbers, giving you only a variance of $28 million on that. Any questions? They'd be a little confusing. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Maybe this is a question that I ought to ask operations, but seeing that we're underspent on projects, does that mean we're behind on projects?
Are you talking about the operating projects?
Yeah.
No, the operating projects are assessments, they're studies. So they have a tendency to move around depending on how we do those assessments. And those assessments can be 3-4 year type assessments or plans. So therefore, we can't determine that we did complete that one. It may move into the next year after that. So they're not capital projects, they're just operating projects. Does that help, sir?
I'm not sure that answers my question. I'm talking about schedule. If we budgeted for the project and yet we haven't spent the money, does that mean that we're behind on the project?
It could mean that we're behind on the project. It could also mean it's a spending timing issue for the fiscal year. But we can gather that data and report that in our next project update.
I'd be interested to hear where we are on the schedule.
Very good. Okay, got it. I understand. Good question. Any other questions?
Director Bourne has comment?
Portion that we talked about earlier is, did you say 3 million? Or what number did you use?
It is this number here. It's primarily that. It's closer to 4 million. We also had some other adjustments in there. But yeah, the uninterrupted water was probably around $4 million.
And that's not a budgeted amount each year for revenue. That's a unknown amount that you come back with, and I guess you'll put some figure there.
Yeah, the contracted system rate contracts we have in this number here is basically fixed. We know exactly what those numbers are. That's why I don't put interruptible water into the budget, because of the risk that it may vary. And I want to make sure I know the exact amount.
But that's not money that's not sales yet. Or it's an asset, but have you sold it?
The interruptible water?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's what it is sold. It is, okay, gotcha.
Take
All
and
right.
pay. Yeah, we collected that money.
Okay.
But it's revenue that we don't depend upon
Right.
as far as our rate making goes.
Right, gotcha.
And I did not put any in for FY23 budget either. This is 22, so we didn't put any for 23 as well.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Good questions.
Any,
Oh, yes, sir.
Would it be helpful to separately state the uninterruptibles as a separate line item, just so that you know, oh, I'm over 3.3 million, but only $1 million of it was uninterruptible? Because it's not a budgeted item to begin with, so.
Sure, we can do that.
Yeah, then you know where you are on the items that really are budgeted and how much your uninterruptible is saving your bacon, basically.
I can do that.
Or not, yeah.
Okay, definitely. Can do that.
All right, any other questions or comments? Thank you, David. We'll
This is
move right
just-
on
just quick
to
look.
agenda
This is how we
item.
spent the money, expenses. All right.
Yep. Number 9, report and possible discussion on fiscal year 2022 fourth quarter investment report by David Thompson, Chief Financial Officer.
We ended the fiscal year with $101 million. This is a 2-year look at the book values. We mainly have most of the money in our money market accounts, and that does track fast with the Fed rates changes. I mean, we've had significant changes since February. So this normally stays around 25 basis points higher than the Fed rate. So that's where I have a lot of the money in the money market. Remember, all monies are securely secured. We do still have some remaining funds out there lingering from earlier February when the rates were basically zero. But we're now starting to ladder and start increasing and getting more rates on our spends here. All of this is mandated on what we think our cash flow needs are going to be. And this just shows you the significant change that the Fed has done since, the February timeframe. Remember, this is August 31st. So since August 31st, they've raised the rates again. We're approaching 4% now on the numbers in the Fed. Questions?
Questions for David?
Okay. Oh, yes, sir.
Director Sanderson
Yeah, I'm
has a
trying to get the thing
question.
to turn green there, which it wouldn't. As far as our pension contributions are concerned, are we able to maybe manage the timing of the monies going into the pension plan such that you don't take losses on benefits being paid? Are we able to do that at all?
You mean the contributions that we make for it?
Yeah, I mean, those are coming out of maybe cash or money market, then not taking a loss on a unfortunately depressed asset to make the payments. Are we able to do that at all, or?
No, we just always schedule it for the beginning of each
certain
fiscal year.
time?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And that's
got
how we budget it.
Yeah, okay.
And we did that for 23 as well. So it's already set.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Another good question.
Okay, any other questions? Right.
Very hard to pull up because it's your favorite.
Move along to
Presentation.
agenda item number 10. Discussion and possible action on surplus personnel property by David Thompson, Chief Financial Officer.
Okay, this is, the state does require that anytime we're trying to get rid of personal properties, that we're required to bring before the board anything that's defective or too costly to repair or simply we don't need. And once you approve it, we put it on a well-advertised auction to sell. So what I'd like to do is just let you look at the items that we're surplusing. Questions?
Any questions for David before we have him read the resolution? All right, please read the resolution.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to dispose of the following surplus personal property under the terms and conditions that are in the best interest of the Brazos River Authority. Be it further resolved that the board authorizes the general manager, CEO, in certain instances, to continue to use and/or maintain previously authorized surplus property in a manner that is in the best interest of the Brazos River Authority until appropriate replacement property is received and placed in service. Items no longer needed or repairs not cost efficient. Quantity 1, 2011 Ford F-150 Super Cab 4x2 SS, VIN 1 Foxtrot Tango Foxtrot X-Ray 1 Charlie Foxtrot 3 Bravo Foxtrot Alpha 15569, mileage 159,584. Quantity 1, 2010 Ford Super Duty F-250 Extended Cab 5.4 liter V8, VIN 1 Foxtrot Tango Sierra X-Ray 2 Alpha 53 Alpha Echo Alpha 95653, mileage 70,788. Lot 1, Quantity 3, Binoculars. Quantity 2, Pentax XCP. Quantity 1, Bushnell. Lot 2, Quantity 1, Garmin E-Trix Handheld GPS. Comes on but screen not clear. Lot 3, Quantity 1, AFX Full Enclosed XL Helmet, Normal wear. Lot 4, Quantity 3, Residential Closet Shutter Doors. Door sections measure 78 1/4 inches tall and 24 inches wide when open. Some hardware included, no tracks. Lot 5, Leather Duty Gear, Basket Weave Law Enforcement Duty Rig, assorted pieces, approximately 26 pieces, normal wear on belt. Lot 6, Streamlight Rechargeable Flashlights, batteries and chargers, miscellaneous chargers may not fit flashlights. Lot 7, Latham 100E card, date, and time printer, serial number 1 Echo 102625 does not work. 8, Latham 1000E date and time stamp machine, Charlie November 1 Echo 101614 does not work. Lot 9, Quantity 1, HP OfficeJet Pro 8710 printer scanner, serial number Charlie November 891 Bravo Tango 0 Juliet Delta, not in working condition. Lot 10, Quantity 1, 14-foot by 30-foot floating fishing dock with galvanized pipe rail, 5-foot by 30-foot walkway with handrails. Walkway is one assembled piece, approximately 18 years old. Handrails need some repairs. Lot 11, Quantity 1, Craftsman Portable Air Compressor, serial number 2402127039, approximately 18 years old, 25-gallon, 175 PSI portable air compressor, does not run, bad motor. Lot 12, Quantity 1, Reliant Model E64001, Shaper Table, serial number 8201021, approximately 21 years old, normal wear, low hours of use, running when removed from service, 01/12/2022. Lot 13, Quantity 1, Wilton OCP .03-04 by .15-02, portable electric bandsaw, serial number Whiskey Juliet 2258, approximately 15 years old, runs but will not cut straight, removed from service January 2022. Lot 14, Quantity 1, Norditrack Quadflex treadmill, motor out. Lot 15, Quantity 1, Fellows Commercial Shredder, Power Shred, 480cc, serial number 1408.113.2102-05890 Oscar. Completely unusable, was checked out by mechanic, removed from service 09/16/2022. Lot 16, Quantity 1, Train AC and Heat Unit, model number 4 Tango Echo Hotel 3 Foxtrot 60 Bravo 1000 Alpha Bravo, serial number 9325 Sierra 1 Sierra 2 Victor. AC unit with heat strips, removed from service 9/15/22, no longer running. Lot 17, Quantity 1, Cummins Power Generator, serial number Echo 120341256, model Golf Hotel Echo 1205166, 60 kilowatt natural gas. Unit was replaced due to needing a bigger unit. Unit is in great shape and running great when pulled from service 7/17/2019, has 160.9 engine hours. Lot 18, Quantity 1, Holt Cat Generator, serial number 5 November Alpha 11550, model Sierra Romeo 5, 455 kilowatt. Motor model 3412 Cat, serial number 8124080. Unit is in poor condition, no enclosure around generator, no fuel tank. It is sitting on skid and the control module is out. Lot 19, Quantity 9, used black leather office chairs, various styles. All are rolling chairs, adjustable, very dirty, dusty, lots of scratches, poor condition. Removed from service July 2022. Lot 20, quantity 1, 6-foot bush hog shredder attachment, serial number 120097, model 0629, Bravo Hotel, 9 years old, fair condition, needs new tire and blades. Removed from service July 2020. Lot 21, quantity 2, used high-security gate operators, model 222, Echo X-ray, Sierra Tango, 19 years old, were still functioning properly when taken out of service. Removed from service January 2018.
Heard the reading of the resolution. Motion made by Jen Henderson to adopt, second made by Director Fernandez. Please pull the board. Yes.
Director Huber?
Yes.
Director Taylor? Director Abraham?
Yes.
Director Boren?
Yes.
Director Fernandez?
Yes.
Director Giese?
Yes.
Director Henderson?
Yes.
Director Jimenez?
Yes.
Director Crum?
Yes.
Director Lattimore?
Yes.
Director Leslie?
Yes.
Director Lloyd?
Yes.
Director Luton?
Yes.
Director Sanderson?
Yes.
Director Savage?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Wilson?
Yes.
Agenda item number 11, discussion and possible action on board attendance by Cynthia Flores, presiding officer. Members of the board, the BRA policy on board attendance requires action on a fellow director missing more than half of a board meetings in a calendar year. Director Thomas Abraham has exceeded the number of missing for 2022. Director Abraham has requested excuses for 2 of his absences to attend funerals out of the country. Should the board grant the excuses, Director Abraham will remain in good standing in accordance to the BRA policies. Should the board not approve the requested excuses, the presiding officer will be required to notify the governor's office of the missing meetings. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I would like to make a motion to accept his excuses regarding his absences. Is there a second?
Second.
Second made by Director Smith. Please pull the board.
Got to read the resolution, please.
Oh, sorry.
The Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority, pursuant to its enabling legislation, Section 8502.0091, hereby grants Director Thomas Abraham excused absences from 2 regular scheduled board meetings in calendar year 2022.
Very good. A motion was made by Director Flores, a second by Director Smith. Please pull the board.
Presiding officer.
Yes.
Yes.
Director Taylor.
Yes.
Director Abraham.
Yes.
Yes.
Director Jimenez.
Yes.
Director Crum.
Yes.
Director Lattimore.
Yes.
Director Leslie.
Yes.
Director Lloyd.
Yes.
Director Luton.
Yes.
Director Sanderson.
Yes.
Director Savage.
Yes.
Director Smith.
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And Director Henderson, a second made by Director Crum. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. With no further business, our meeting is adjourned at 11:38.